globally, we are really quite resource limited with respect to how much or how little land we have available to grow food. In fact, I can just depict this to you in a nice way, I think. Just imagine this sheet of paper being the surface of the entire Earth, okay? If I now go ahead and I fold this, and I fold it twice until it's approximately postcard size, then what you see now is the total amount of land in the world. If you now think of a business card as all the land in the world that's agricultural, again, the postcard size is all land, but the business card size is all agricultural land, then you will see how limited we are with respect to the resources we have available to us. So imagine this business card being all agricultural land. I will now fold it into one piece that's 2/3 its original size, and the other piece that's 1/3 its original size, and then I will rip my own business card into pieces. The larger of the two is the agricultural land that's referred to as marginal land. It's called marginal because you can't really grow crops there, because the land is either not fertile enough to grow crops or there's not enough water available. And so how do we use that 2/3 of all agricultural land? We use it largely with ruminant livestock. Why? Because these ruminants are capable of eating the largely cellulitic material that grows there, cellulose material or containing material such as grasses and certain legumes and so on, but you can't really grow crops there. The 1/3 of my business card is the total amount of land, agricultural land in the world that is arable land. And that means that is where you can grow crops for either humans or animals. And that's how resource limited we are. It's really important to mention that 2/3 of all agricultural land in the world is indeed used for livestock, but most of it could not be used for food production by any other means. If you were to ask me what I regard as the main pillars of sustainability, I would say there are 5. I would say, first of all, I completely agree. Sustainability is not just environmental sustainability, but sustainability, environmental sustainability is one important pillar. Okay, so but within the environment, what's included is air impacts, water impacts, soil impacts, climate impacts, and so forth. Okay, so that's one of the 5 pillars. The second one is animal welfare. Very important. Husbandry and housing of animals are critical, not just in the consumer's eye, but also, of course, for the producer. That is the absolute basis of their existence, to have animals that are in good welfare and in good health. That's the basis of what a farmer has to work with. And also, of course, the profits that this person makes, those profits are contingent upon animals being in good welfare. So environmental quality, animal welfare, number 2. Then food safety, very important. We take this for granted here, but in other parts of the world, they don't take it for granted. Food safety. 4th one is worker health and safety, and attracting workers, retaining workers on a farm is paramount. If you were to ask 1,000 farmers in California what their most important sustainability consideration is, they will tell you it's workers. Okay, that's not what the consumers associate with an important sustainability issue, but that's what farmers associate with it. And the number 5 is financial viability. So the environment, animal welfare, food safety, workers, and financial viability are, in my opinion, the 5 pillars sustainability rests upon. With respect to the carbon footprint, something really interesting has to be considered, and it hadn't been in the past, namely that there are huge differences across those different so-called greenhouse gases. Gases such as CO2, carbon dioxide, that's associated when you burn fossil fuel like oil, coal, and gas. So, for example, CO2 is a so-called stock gas, okay? And that's referred to as a stock gas because every time you burn gas by driving to a supermarket, let's say, then you put out CO2 through the exhaust pipe of your car. And that CO2 stays in the atmosphere for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Every time you have ever driven a car, you put out CO2 into the atmosphere, and all of that is still there. Every time you drive your car, you add to the existing stock of CO2 that's already there, okay? So it's a long-lived climate pollutant. Methane is very different. Methane does not do that. Methane does not accumulate in the atmosphere. It's a so-called flow gas, and it's roughly produced and destroyed at equal rates. And the fact that methane is destroyed has not found its way into most public policy applications. Everybody just quantifies the emissions of methane, meaning how much is produced, leaving out the fact that there's an atmospheric process called hydroxyl oxidation that destroys methane at almost the same rate. And that is why particularly ruminant livestock has such a bad rap out there, because people only look at how much is put out and not how much is destroyed. But this is really important. And now that we understand that this has to be done, we know that the carbon footprint of ruminant livestock, for example, here in the United States, is at least exaggerated by a factor of 4. At least by a factor of 4. Yeah, this is really important. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, publishes a report annually called the EPA Greenhouse Gas Emissions Sources and Sinks. That's the name of it. Sources and sinks. And it is bewildering that everybody reporting on these emissions will only talk about the sources. For agriculture, the source for agriculture emissions, the source quantification is approximately 10.5%. And that's referred to as agriculture and land use. And land use also includes forestry, okay? Agriculture and forestry, in other words, in the United States are responsible for 10.5% of our greenhouse gases emitted into the atmosphere. But if you only read a few pages further on, then you find that the same sector is a sink for 11.8%, a source for 10.5%, and a sink for 11.8%. And if you don't believe me, I don't mean you, I mean whoever the listener is or the viewer, just go to the EPA emission inventory sources and sinks, and you will find those numbers. What you will also find is that if you so wish to look at global numbers, then you need to go to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. And there you will find that the same is true globally, namely that agriculture and forestry are a greater sink than they are a source for greenhouse gases.